Okay, Paul Heayn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Yeah, it's interesting. We worked together at Runkeeper a long time ago, and I've been, to my wife's chagrin, living out loud here as I'm figuring out what's next. And I guess some of the things I've been talking about are some of the things that you've been thinking about and tinkering with. I was excited to hear from you and catch up, and excited to hear that you're interested in some of the same things as me.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely true just on both the where you are in life and then also like how do you use and learn about AI in general. So it's definitely like a collision of kind of paths.
Paul, for context for listeners, maybe just set the stage, talk a bit about your professional background in product management and also what led you to start tinkering with AI, how long ago, and where are you today?
Yeah, so I got my start as a PM at Runkeeper, and there learned a bunch of building products that people love and working with UX, going through the process and learning about the different metrics and how to just build a holistic product with an entire team. I moved on to another.
Paul, remind me, what were you doing before you were doing product management?
So I was a web developer using Cold Fusion, which I don't think anyone knows that, but it's now Adobe and it's used only in like DC and San Francisco. But it's like a script language. And then I went to business school and wanted to be closer to the tech, but not be doing the actual coding. I wanted to be a little bit more strategic. And so I went to business school, found out about product management and loved it. And then I went to Runkeeper and learned there and ran from there.
Got it. And so talk a little bit about what led you to AI, when you started tinkering with it, and how far along you are in your expedition.
Yeah, so I started tinkering when ChatGPT, actually a little bit before ChatGPT kind of blew up. I heard that there were these different uses to use LLMs to try to basically create or automate some of your emails. It's like, oh, that sounds interesting. And it could write stories and stuff like that, or change voices, like the tone of voice and how you write. Oh, that's interesting. That's pretty cool. But then like when you tried ChatGPT, there was this kind of like moment of letdown where it's just, oh, this is all it does. And I didn't really get it. Put it on the back burner and then tried again a couple months later, use it to code a little bit. And I was like, oh, this is super interesting, but I don't know necessarily what to code. And then earlier, like a couple months ago, one of my product analysts, who's amazing, he left. And I was like, how am I going to continue to do all the work at my current job? So I tried to build a bunch of different, what I thought were agents to replicate a lot of what he did. And that's where I went down the path. Also, like managing how do you deal with kind of corporate confidentiality and dealing with a lot of these things that you have to when you're not like in a startup. You have to follow certain procedures. And then talking with you, I realized that, oh, there's a whole nother world. And I think there's like an onion of AI where like you start unpeeling it and you're just like, whoa, you can do a lot with this. But then there's like the step back of, well, should you do all of this with LLMs, or should you program some of this, or have a mix of both? And so like now I'm of the opinion that you want both, like in there, like you want a reasoning agent to figure out what tools to pull off the top and really dive in to accomplish your goals. And you want to automate it as much as possible, but then you also want to make sure that you're checking its work and it's not hallucinating on you.
So how did you make out in terms of trying to, so were you trying to use AI to replicate your tasks, or were you trying to use AI to replicate the tasks of the business analyst who left?
So I was trying to replicate both. It was both. So both what he was doing, so any kind of like user story writing or like PRDs or product requirement documents, or really like sprint review, like presentations, a lot of decks and stuff like that, trying to automate a lot of that from connecting with Jira and really trying to figure out like how can you just remove a lot of that, I don't want to say pain, but the stuff that you have to do as a product manager, like the communication parts that you have to do, and that are just like time sucks that the stakeholders need.
And so how did you figure out what to build using AI, and how effective were you at building it?
I just started small, and how I went about it, because again, this was using it in a corporate structure was I would basically think about what is a small piece of a tool that I could or an action that I could automate and use AI to transform the data. And so it would basically, I have a very bare bones taking application, which will just summarize it and summarize the meeting. And then I can round up all of the other meetings and get context and search for different contexts across different meetings and have PRDs spit out from that or have stories spit out from that. And how I did this was basically it's nothing super complicated, but because I had this corporate kind of structure, I had a Python based application which connected to our internal LLM, and then I would use Perplexity to ask it questions and copy the code directly in, but all the API keys were in a separate file. So I was able to just basically copy everything in. It's very slow, but pretty effective at learning how to actually build this and understand how the code was working. So I was learning at the same, relearning how to code at the same time.
And what were the biggest learnings or surprises through that process?
I think it was the biggest one was when you realize that you could ask it to debug itself. And it seems common knowledge now, but you just spit it back and be like, hey, I got this error. Can you help me through this? And it's, oh yeah, I made this mistake. And because it has the context window, it has the memory in there, it knows the code and it can go back and give you the entire code back. Then you just copy and paste that and bring it over. So I think that was one of the aha moments that I changed from when I was learning that, oh, it could code to oh, it can actually be a whole development team that's helping you out. And I don't mean that as in this will replace developers. I mean that this will help you and augment what you do in development and how you test.
And so going forward, do you feel like you've maxed out what it can do for you in your day job, or do you see lanes where you can continue to do more with these tools over time?
I think that I haven't maxed out at all. I have built a number of semi-autonomous agents or semi-autonomous agentic code, which basically means that I am still the person who is running the scripts and it's going off and doing some agent-like activities, but it's not completely automated and it's not something that I have triggered yet. So I think that's from talking with you in the past couple of days, it made me dive into the agent space more so than I had looked in the last couple of months, and just figured out what are the different frameworks, what are the different tools that are available, and also how do these things all function, how they all work together, and what are the pros and cons between a UI wrapper of a framework versus just building the actual agent in code. So I think that there was a number of different learnings that I was just trying to figure out and trying to understand. And even you and I, we're approaching agents differently. I imagine from what I've read, you don't necessarily want to dive into the code and be code heavy. I imagine you want to be integrating with tools that are no code or low code, but you don't necessarily want to get in and build your own scripts. Or maybe I'm putting words into your mouth.
I want to be in my zone of excellence and delight, right? And I want to build big shit. And so what I'm working through is how to take the steps that will help me to achieve both of those things. Historically, I've been a mouth. I haven't used my hands much, right? And I've typically tried to understand where the North Star is of what we're trying to achieve, and then what skill sets are required to go and achieve it, and then go get the best people for each skill set to go bring it to life. These tools are supposedly changing a lot in terms of what each person can do, but does that change the calculus of how I should think about team building? I don't know yet. And I'm really wrestling because, for example, it's helpful to get in and use the tools, and I've been doing it, and each time I'm getting a little further, but still, just to get something basic done, it's all right, I'll go copy the API key from this place and then the URL from that place, and then get the text editor from this place and terminal, and I'm still learning about what all these things are, and then it's all right, and then publish, and it's like error, right? And it's I can't publish anything without an error, no matter how small it is, and no matter which service I use. And then I just end up chasing my own tail around for an hour or two, and then I get frustrated and bag it, and then I try again a couple weeks later, right? And that's been my journey with AI so far, which I wouldn't call productive, other than to experience firsthand maybe some of where it's at for people like me.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, which is like you're building AI products either for yourself, which like don't have to be productized. They don't have to be like, hardened or anything like that. They can just live in your folders and, you're running them in your own local environments, versus having a local server, which is a little more complicated, which is like, then the next step is like publishing it online, and you have to deal with different dependencies. And now you have the local server and your like hosted server, and it gets a lot more complicated. So that's why I've focused on like just building the things that I'm building, like just locally. Just, I would say like the one suggestion I would say for you is don't worry about publishing it. Get it to work, get it to like function how you want, and like figure out like what is the process that you like. What is your lane of excellence? Is it that like you want to be in the code and you want to learn that stuff? Or is it that like you want to get a product out to people? Because I think those are two different things like that you could go about and figure out like which path.
Yeah, I think the tricky thing for me is that where I'm starting is around this kind of learning journey, right? And in its earliest phases, for as far as the eye can see, it's not a business, right? And so there's something empowering about, for example, with MCJ in the early days, every podcast episode I would send to an editor, and I would pay out of pocket, and the editor would turn around and it would sound nice, but it would cost money every time, right? And actually, each episode cost orders of magnitude more than a month of the script for editing all you can eat. Or maybe it's not all you can eat, but I haven't hit the cap yet, and I'm editing a ton. And I'm doing it all myself. So it's cheaper, it's faster, I have more control. Why wouldn't I use the script? And maybe it's not perfect, but it's good enough for my purposes, right? And so there's something empowering about that when it's not a business yet. And also, if the whole thesis is that AI is going to change how startups are built and funded, then how am I not going to get my hands dirty, right? So I wrestle with that just on principle. But my natural state is not getting my hands dirty. So it's like I'm wrestling with that every day. So having this conversation and having the equivalent of a blankie, a PM who's closer to the tools than me, who might not be an engineer, but still closer to the tools than me to help me through it, right? That is better than me banging my head against the wall myself. But wouldn't it be even better if there was like a college hacker who's immersed in the tools, who can sit with me and get immersed in my processes and then help me connect the dots on manage to the index of what we can automate as we go and automate more and more over time, and have it be neatly organized and structured and high quality and performant without bugs? And it's like, that's where I want to get to. And so it's like, all right, is that really going to be me that gets it there? Or am I just doing this as an interim step to get dirty enough that I get so frustrated to justify taking out my wallet? But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's the fun of not having any like business plan or like revenue tied to it, because it's your money out of pocket, and you're just like, do I want to spend $100 on this or whatever it is, or do I want to spend the 2 to 3 hours to try to figure out how I can do it on my own? Like transcription, like you could just use the ChatGPT for transcription or Descript, or you can try to build it yourself. And then it's like, that's the other balance of, do you want to, if you're going to build this for something that's like self-hosted, does it need to be on the cloud? Does it need to have all that stuff? Or is it okay to try to deal with building these products yourself or these tools yourself and having to deal with the maintenance? And I would say that's fun for a fun project, but like, when you start to scale, I don't think it'll function like that. At that point, you need an engineer who's, okay, yeah, I can help you rebuild this because this is not great.
My dream is that I can just go and be a content machine and build tons of relationships, have tons of discussions like this, learn a ton. And then in my wake, the infrastructure underneath, which is constantly getting better, smarter, more automated, higher quality, et cetera. And then the two go hand in hand. Our technical infrastructure expands as the content infrastructure expands, and the content feeds the technical, because the bigger the content library, for example, and the better we get at structuring the data, the more insights that can be gotten in the aggregate and per episode in terms of guest prep, in terms of what topics to cover next, in terms of in the aggregate, what's the consensus, right? As this growing body of knowledge grows, what are the key themes that are emerging, right? There's so much there, and that could inform our internal planning, but that also could be content in its own right, like living, breathing content as the library grows. And that's awesome. And oh, by the way, those tools that we built for ourselves, that we dog food essentially, could be valuable to other content shops as well, and then maybe there's a business with a revenue stream, and then all of a sudden we have budget that we can then feed back into growing faster. That doesn't come out of the savings that I need to put food on the table because I don't earn a living, right? So that's the dog chasing its own tail around, and one way or another, it's going to get addressed, and I'm just nudging everything towards the middle. I'm getting dirtier with the tools, having more discussions like this, exploring different paths, and I don't know the answer is. But one of the things I was hoping we could do today is talk a little bit about where I should start. Resourcing aside, we can talk about resourcing separately, but even resourcing aside, just from an infrastructure standpoint, what tools should I use? What foundation should I set? How I should go about it? Because right now, I feel like my MacBook is like my kid's backpack. His backpack, he always knows where everything is on there, but that thing is a freaking mess. And that's what I feel about my MacBook. I forget which things I've subscribed to. They're all using the same words. I got to go to so many different tools for so many different things. And did I use my Gmail? Did I use my work account for the login? And it's just, and I can't get anything to work, right? It's like such a mess. For me, it's a long way from Lego blocks, right? And that's what I want. I want one site to go to that I can just Lego block my way to whatever the heck I want. Do I need to build that? Do I need to wait for that to be there, that's someone else to build? But until it's there, I need a team. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think, so I recommended N8N because I think it gives the flexibility plus the UI to build these things. But I also spent like multiple nights in the past couple days playing around with it, and I felt like the error handling, like when you reach errors, it's so frustrating to deal with because the errors.
After you sent it to me, I logged in and I spent a good few hours in that thing, and now I have a sense of what the stated vision is of what I can do. And that I see why Paul sent that to me. That maps pretty well to what I'm trying to do. I did not get that thing to work. So frustrating.
And so I think I need to spend a little bit more time because there's a lot of like nuances in there. So maybe like I'll come back once I figure it all out and show you how to use it. But I think that might be like where you would want to get to, because I think there's like an enterprise version of that which you can build products on top of it. So you basically use that as like a middle layer to whatever services you're connecting to, and then build like a website on top of that connects to it. So I think like long term that might be like something to invest more time into. But right now I wouldn't be able to explain it to you, but I think that is the right path. And I think that there's also make.com, which is another similar one. I haven't tried that out at all. But some of the things that you were asking about, some of them are just like, can you use Zapier? Or like some of these like triggering kind of software to start the automation process and get this done. And maybe like I think
but each one of these tools has its own learning curve, different UI, different looking. It's like it's hard enough for me to get used to any one of them, let alone how to start putting them together. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not that smart, but it is frustrating and definitely out of my comfort zone to try to navigate these different tools. And I'm sticking with it because it was frustrating once upon a time for me to learn how to ice skate, and then I played hockey for decades, right? It was frustrating one time for me to learn how to ride a bike or to snowboard or to do a lot of things, right? And then to start companies, right? And it's now, or host a podcast. Super nervous, my first podcast. Now, hundreds of episodes later, I might still suck, but I don't get nervous anymore. It's like muscle memory, right? So maybe this is the same, and I just need to invest the time and not get frustrated. So I'm not giving up, but at the same time, I'm trying to be intellectually honest about what my superpowers are and where I need to complement my abilities such that I can go build a big important company as efficiently as possible and not waste cycles or shave years off my life in the process in areas that could otherwise be avoided.
Yeah, and I think there's two other tools that you should look into. And the reason why I mention that is because they go hand in hand, or they're the counterpart to N. So one is in Microsoft Visual Studio Code, you can add plugins. So I don't know if you have Code installed, but you can add plugins, and they're...
I installed more things in the last few weeks than in my entire life before that. I don't know if I have that one, but I have a lot of things installed.
Have you been able to use them?
I use ChatGPT constantly, all day long, so that's one thing I'm using. Every once in a while, I'll switch to Claude if it feels like it's a little more of a Claude type question. Perplexity, so even like people say deep research, and I can never remember, is deep research the perplexity thing or that? And then certain things are then baked into other things, right? So it's, you can access it there, but you can also access it over there. It's like, how do I remember? I might be subscribing to multiple things that I don't need to subscribe to because I already get the things I'm subscribing to over here, over there, right? But for example, for guest prep, I think that the manual process should be to figure out which tools to use. Do I want to use Perplexity first and then plug it into and then manually, and then figure out how to automate that next, and then build an agent, right? But I'm still working through those processes right now. I know, for example, that I can go to ChatGPT, and that's pretty good for most of my stuff. The script I'm spending a lot of time in, doing a bunch of the editing myself, and that I've started to get down. I'm still learning, but I'm already functional, and that's good. And then I've played with a bunch of this other stuff, Zapier or Replit. I had a journey with Replit, and what are some other ones that I played? Cursor, I took a stab at. Devon, I took a stab at. But anything where it plops me into Terminal or anything like that feels like Terminal, and I'm supposed to function from the outset with no context or guidance, forget it. I'm dead in the water.
Yeah, and that might be just like on asking too vague questions. Like, and not necessarily like, I think that one of the harder parts is like, how do I get started? Like, how do I get this thing to show? Whatever I coded, how do I get that to show? And like Python, it's very easy to like understand what's happening. Like in like the terminal, you just type in Python and then whatever script you want it to run, and it'll run. Whereas like some of the others, like you have to compile it, or like you have to run a actual server to get it to run. And I think that if you want to go down the code path, stick to Python. Like I'm just going to say,
So then should I put this whole journey off for the next month or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months and just go learn Python and then come back around? I'm 48, right? I haven't learned it yet. This is where I wrestle, right? It's easy to say, just go learn Python, but it is so far out of like where my natural state is when I wake up every day.
I think with AI, you might not have to learn Python. You might only need to learn how to interact with Python, if that makes sense. Like you might just need to understand the file structure, how like the methods are created, and how to start and how to stop the actual scripts, and you might be able to get far.
Okay, so let me give you 3 paths. One path is Jason and all his AI best friends, ChatGPT and whatever tools, right? And like committed, solo, no help, no questions, like muscle through, just sit in front of the computer and muscle through every day until you figure it out, right? That's one path. Second path is, I'll give you 4 paths actually. Second path is do that for a while, and then once you understand what you're banging your head up against, then try to bring in help with a better sense of where you need it because you've been taking it on yourself. And we can debate about how much mastery I should have before it's okay to pass it off and like when to wave the white flag. The third path is wave the white flag now and just go get some help, right? And I guess the third path would be get some help, and that help looks like a junior hacker. Call it an intern, call it like someone part-time, but someone to actually sit with me and do the stuff. And maybe sit with me remote, but talk with me, understand my processes, and then work with me to automate, which like sounds awesome, to be honest. And the fourth path is, no, still do it yourself, but do it pair programming style where someone like you, or maybe someone like Big Philly C, or somebody, we can talk about what the right background is, but that can actually do it with me and hold my hand and reassure me that it's going to be okay as I'm muscling through it, so that anytime I start to get frustrated, they can save the day. What would you do if you're me? Yeah.
I would say path 3, but I would change it. And I would change instead of saying I need an intern, I would say I rely on AI to ask the questions. You will get so many answers from the AI, and then augment it with phone calls like these, or with social media questions about this, or like Stack Overflow.
So instead of a human, you think that just leaning on the AI for help will get me where I need to go?
Yes. Yeah, and that's like literally what I've been doing. That's
different
in
though,
the plugin.
We are not the same. Yeah.
But
You used to be a web developer, and now you're a product manager. I'm not either of those things.
But that was a long time ago, and I wasn't a great web developer. That's fine. But the tools now in the actual plugins and agents that are available are extremely good at helping or deciphering and reasoning what you're trying to get at. And if you get like the thought of chain of thought, like you understand what they're actually like dissecting, and you can actually learn more from that, and then they give the answer, and you like learn very quick. So I think that it's like an augmentation. It's like AI with someone who could call, and maybe that's you pay someone hourly or something like that, a hacker or something like that. Like
if no one builds that service, I'm gonna build the service. It's like Cameo for pair programming. You know what I mean? Like it's like a jukebox. You like
a Stack Overflow pay.
Like it's like a genie. It's you rub your belly 3 times and a pair programmer appears that can help you untie the knots that you've gotten stuck with. You know,
I love it. I feel like,
but with consistency, who's plugged in over time and has all the history and knows where your code base is and stuff. But just rub your belly and there they are. I'm gonna build it. I think like programming Genie, something.
I love it.
And I want the same thing with on the other side, because I told you I've been talking about building that show and starting with character development and stuff. I want the same thing with like some of these big social media comedian character developer. They post a lot, but it's never themselves. They're always like in character, right? And they build big followings.
Yeah.
I want someone like that to call to help me figure out that too. But that's another story. I also
like
want
avatars.
or even without avatars. Just I don't know how to be funny. I don't know how to build skits. I don't know how to do a lot of that stuff, and people know, and also there's increasingly tools that can help, but I need the same help over there that I need over here, right? I feel like that's going to be a lot of areas, right? If you're a great lawyer, but you are like me as it relates to the tooling, right? Like, how do you start to automate the mundane stuff? You can't do it yourself. And also, you're booked on the treadmill of billable hours. How do you get there? Same thing with accounting. Same thing with a lot of these things, right? And I don't know. Yeah, there's these services that are going to merge that are going to do it all. But I also think there's hybrids where you want to just start picking stuff off in-house and make yourself more efficient. But, like, how do you actually get there? It's like a big business transformation question.
Yeah, I think that people will... I don't know how, like, much traction this will get, but I do think that people will start building personal software that is custom to them. And so I built like a workout app for myself.
Oh,
like
yeah?
I asked ChatGPT, or I think I asked like Perplexity to build me like a workout plan that was like explosive and strength training. And I was like, I want to work out 6 days a week. And it spit it out in JSON. And then I was like, all right, can you build me a web app around that? And it did.
Did you tie it to your bank account such that anytime you don't work out 6 days a week, it automatically withdraws and donates to charity?
Not yet. That's on version 2. No, but like this idea of, I want to accomplish something that like, there's no barriers. There are barriers. Like there are things that are like not solved or you need engineers, but a lot of the problems that we have as people that don't have a huge TAM are things that people might go and try to solve themselves. I think that there's something there where it's, I just need to get started, or I need to get help and have someone holding my hand. There is something there because I think people might be starting to see the light, but they can't get past the like, how do I just get started? Or how do I get past this error or whatever it is?
I'd like to go in 2 directions. One, I'd like to go big picture for a second, just talk generically about the future, and then I'd like to come back around and talk about my needs very specifically, because I thought this was going to be a pair programming show, and it's a therapy show instead, but that's fine. But on the big picture one, I had a guest come on, Sahil Lavingia came on recently, and what he was saying was that essentially vendor-sold software is screwed because these tools are going to enable more and more companies to just build personalized stuff just for them in-house. What do you think about that? Agree or disagree?
I agree, but I think that it's going to take a while. Just from being like in the corporate structure, like the contracts take a long time. They take a lot of like diligence. And is someone in leadership willing, in a corporate level, willing to take the risk to build it themselves, knowing how long things typically build in their company? Like it just goes a little bit slower, and will be competitive enough to do everything that these SaaS companies that are already providing, are they able to build it? And are they willing to put their name on the line for that? So I think that's going to take longer than we think, but I think that there's definitely, the words are written down on paper and it'll happen. I think it'll happen, I don't know, five years-ish.
And when you look at startups and you look at bringing new products to market and you look at the roles of engineers, PMs, designers, and the process in general, and granted, there's no fixed process. The process is different at different startups, and some have wildly different processes, but there's certainly themes, right? Directionally, how do you think AI is and will be changing the roles in terms of how many, the types of roles, and just for you as a PM, like how much is your job going to be changing directionally, and how much has it already?
I think that with the economy and everything that's happening, people will be forced to use it to AI to make up the difference in lower headcounts. I think that's just going to happen. So it's going to be a force that we have to deal with. And I think that the people who know how to utilize AI in an appropriate manner will be able to get answers to their problems quicker. When I say that, get prototypes in front of users faster, understand that's really the true solution, prototype a lot of different things very quickly, and then say, yes, we need to productize that. And I don't think the triad of UX product engineering is going to go away, but I think that the roles are going to expand to overlap each other. And so I think that maybe you have a team that was typically released or focused on one thing. Maybe they're focused on 3 or 4 different things, and like they're accomplishing what 3 or 4 teams can actually do. I think that's what's going to happen. And it's all the stuff that PMs, all the artifacts and documents that we have to create, I think will be created much, much quicker. And then you're more proofreading what's actually happening and figuring out how to get in front of people. And that will be the bottleneck. It's how do you actually test this? How do you actually talk with the users? And like, how do you speed that up? But I think, I think there'll be some need to embrace AI just with how things are potentially changing.
And where does that come from? Is that just each person individually just tinkering and trying different stuff? Is there certain training that should be done? Like the training for how to be a PM, should that training change? And should it be the PM training that delivers the how to incorporate the AI tools, or does there need to be AI specific training?
I don't know, it depends. I think that there probably needs to be AI specific training. Just literally from the past week, I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculously complex and trying to get this up and running. So do I think that the tooling is there for anyone from any kind of walk of life to pick this up and automate things away? No, I don't think so. I think it needs more training. But as for specific PM training, I think PMs are and I can talk just about PMs, but they're overworked and they're looking for ways to try to be more efficient with their time. So they're naturally going to start to entertain these things. And I would imagine most PMs are already using AI in some capacity to try to do things. Maybe some other PMs have tried and they didn't see the light and okay, this doesn't fit my needs, but maybe they haven't dug deep enough. And so I think as we go into the future, there will be a need to try to level up quickly and try to understand what these tools do and how they fit into your everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and to get real tactical here, so you said me and bang my head against the wall with the tools, and that's fine. But let's take that is it N8N tool that you sent me to? Yeah. So should I start with a tool like that, or should I start with ChatGPT? And if I should start with ChatGPT, how do I know if it's ChatGPT or Claude or one of the other 100 LLMs? When I want to do anything, where do I start?
I think start with the one that you like. And I know that's a cop-out answer.
Are you talking about the LLM?
LLM, yeah. Okay. LLM, just start with that.
Always start there.
For now, for now, start there. And I would say, as someone who doesn't want to spend monthly subscriptions, figure out a way to move from ChatGPT to using the ChatGPT API key. Because the API key, you buy credits and they don't expire, at least all the ones that I've used. So build your own ChatGPT in a web browser that you can use, and you don't have to worry about a monthly subscription as much. And that way it's a fixed cost. And then I would say learn about model context protocols, which are what agents use. They're the tools that things are used, that agents are basically talking through APIs. So Claude built this protocol, and there are a ton of different websites that you can integrate with this MCP. And so the agent that I use for coding, it's called RO Code, RO Code, and you can turn on MCP servers and basically give it access to a lot of different things. And all of a sudden, your questions not only are what's in the LLM, but it answers with what's in your environment, what's on your terminal, and also it'll search online and pull out documents or documentation from like GitHub repos, or it'll give you like number of different options and like pros and cons there. So I can show you like the tooling that I have, but I think that like understanding like MCP and then understanding how does this all work, what does this do, and having the visual reference, that's what like N8N does, where it gives you the canvas and like it shows you the flow of how things work. But then understanding, okay, like I can just add tools that are built into N8N, but then the power comes from the extendability where you can, one, either connect different workflows together in N8N, or you can build your own tools that like extend even further than what you're doing. And so like that means like you can build your own Python to like search for other podcast episodes and have another one that like transcribes it on its own, rather than using like ChatGPT. Again, like I don't use ChatGPT. I have Gemini right now. So that's why I'm like trying to figure out like how to go about these different paths.
Because like for me, if I just look at my podcast production process as an example, because that's the main thing I'm doing now, there's just a lot of moving stuff around. It's like I save it here, and then I move the files to Google Drive, and then I upload them from Google Drive to the script, and then I add them both to a single project that gets created, and then there's a whole set of steps, and I sat down and mapped it out, but I haven't sat down and really mapped it out. But if I really mapped it out, I have all the steps, and then it's all right. Wouldn't it be great if just when I hit stop in Riverside, it just went and did as much of that as it could, and it's just 100 less things that I need to do, right? And even if to start it was 3 or 4 less things I needed to do, and then over time it was 5, 8, 10, 12, 15, and then just started gobbling up steps, then my life's going to get easier and easier, and I'll be able to cover more and more ground, right? Perfect.
And I was looking into Riverside Descript. Riverside doesn't seem like it has that many APIs that you could use. I think it was Riverside. And going back to the MCP kind of thing, the Model Context Protocol, that's just basically a way for it to hit endpoints on an API. It's just, hey, go to this Google API or go to this Airtable API and do this. That's all it is. And the LLM is actually figuring out the reasoning on which tool you should actually use.
That's another thing. Each step, it like lays out 15, ChatGPT will lay out 15 steps I need to do, and then each step, it gives me 7 choices of tools to use. And it's, do the math on that. It's 15 steps, and each one has 7 choices to use. How many tools is that I need to understand to know what makes the most sense? So I can grab the one at the top of the list, top of the list, top of the list, top of the list, but then it's, oh, we left out that those 2 aren't compatible. Then there's like all these gotchas that you find, right? So it's just, I don't know. Maybe it can ultimately get me there, but I find that every single step, it's like screenshot, dump the error into the thing. Screenshot, dump the error into the thing. It's, oh, the instruction says I'm supposed to do this next thing, but actually there is no choice for that on the screen I'm on right now. Screenshot. And it's, oh, I see. And then, it's to try to move 50 feet, it takes me 10,000 steps. It's at least where I am now. Maybe that's just because I'm still in the beginner mode or whatever.
Yeah, I think because you're in ChatGPT, it doesn't see what's in your computer or what you're looking at. And so I think there's 2 angles. There's one, like the coding and like allowing it access to your directory, or allow it to ask you for access to write to your directories or get things from your directories. And then there's the browser use, which is like an agent that will open up browsers and look online and actually click and walk through different paths and get to where you need to go. And so that is, I think, where some of these tools where you can't have API access, it's where you're going to have to probably use browser use, or it's called computer use agents. Browser use is just the repo that I had used. The only issue with browser use, or I haven't looked too much into the other ones, into other solutions, is if you want to change things, you now have to go back into code. And so that's, now I'm dealing with someone else's code. Do I want to do that? Yes or no? Like, I'm not a developer anymore. I wasn't a developer before. Like I wasn't like a Python developer before. And so that is one of those things where it's, yes, like you could solve the problem, but it'll probably take 2 or 3 hours rather than a couple minutes. And is that enough time, or is that like an appropriate amount of time to automate it and then slowly get away from using the computer use agent and try to hard code it? But I think the computer use might be how you can get around some of these, like I'm clicking on everything and I have to go to all these different places. You might be able to automate some of that with that. But then to your point, you're adding another tool onto your toolbox that you have to remember and run. And I don't know if it's like the perfect solution. So I think I'm going back to N8N as like where you want to get to, but you also want to learn Python in the short term.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
Do you want me to show you the coding tool that I was using?
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Do you see anything on your screen that, like, at the bottom on the right side, does it say share?
Yep.
Yeah, so you should be able to share your screen.
All right, let me see if that works. Window. All right. So I am just going to create.
Yeah, and we're going to publish this as audio and as video. So for the audio only, they won't see this, but for the YouTube, they will.
All right, so just creating this guy, and let's say we want. Okay, so first of all, this is VS Code. Jason, you've seen this, right? I don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to open the terminal to know what's going on, and then I have root code installed, which is down here, this guy. Mm-hmm. And so I have this on the left-hand side, or the right-hand side. And so then you have a couple different options from an architect to an ask. So let's just say we want to build like a engineering connection social networking site. I don't know, build a social network. Oh, so hold on, let me cancel this, because what I wanted to do first of all was actually do this in architect mode.
So is Rue like Replit?
I thought Replit was like an online testing tool.
Replit is like natural language to code.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. So I'm going to say keep it simple. Only build. So I don't think it would know what we're actually doing, but that's okay. This is more just like doing the steps of asking the architect and then saying, and I have all the like the auto proofs on. Maybe. So I don't know why. So is this like similar to what Replit does? Like it'll write the files on your computer and.
Yep. Yeah, it looks similar to
Okay.
what Replit does.
Okay, then.
At least to my untrained eye.
All right, then we don't have to go into too much detail then. I thought it was pretty awesome to just basically.
It is awesome, but then trying to get it from that, my Replit experience was in 10 minutes it looked like the thing was built. It built my website, and it was like, oh, it has all the tabs, it has everything. It even took a stab at using putting my desired copy into its own words, and it did a better job than me. Oh, this is amazing. And then trying to get that thing into production was the biggest nightmare.
Do you want to pull it up?
I don't think I still have it. I think
okay.
I killed it. Yeah. Because I just went back to Squarespace, because Squarespace was just like Lego Blocks, right? And like Lego Blocks is where I live.
Got it. Yeah. So maybe coding isn't the right path. Maybe it is just N8N and utilizing ChatGPT to help you when you get these errors, or like to learn these kind of things, or get through pain points. You like call on people that you know, or ask social media. There's got to be like N8N like groups that you can join.
I might, maybe for starters, I can just write down all the steps to my process. Like maybe that's a good starting point, and actually try to document it accurately so that I could hand it to a human or to a machine and say, here's what I want to automate. Like what aspects of it can be automated today.
Yeah, I think once I wrap my head around the differences between all the different agent types, I think I can make some headway on it. It's just the error handling and what's actually happening between the flows of data is what's throwing me off. But yeah, once I get that, I'll let you know. I'll tell you what I did wrong.
Cool. This is awesome, Paul. I'll report back to you as I get further along, and definitely report back to me as you get further in your experimentation as well, both your kind of hobbyist experimentation and the way you're incorporating it into your job. But it's really fascinating to hear how much value you're already getting from it. And I can see a path where I'm also going to get that value too. In fact, I'm very confident that I will. It's just a question of how that manifests and what order I do things. And that's what I'm in the process of sorting through.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Before we go, anything I didn't ask that you wish I did, or any parting words for listeners? Anyone you want to hear from?
No, I don't think so. I'm interested in learning about up and coming AI companies. I thought it was super interesting when you interviewed Lovelace because I had never heard of them. So I think that's super interesting in general, just hearing what people are doing with AI.
Great. Then stay tuned to the pod because I'm going to have a lot more on like that.
Awesome.